What's up, Weirdo Swarm? You are listening to Podagon Infinity, the podcast that opens the door to all things King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, and maybe that tagline's even more appropriate than usual today. My name is Joe.
My name is Spenser, and you're absolutely right, Joe. This podcast opens the door to all things King Gizzard because it is named after the album we're talking about. We're talking about Nonagon Infinity today, and I was thinking originally that we might have been originally geared toward maybe a longer build-up to discussing this album on an episode, but I think given the results of our previous episode, which was our album art bracket, if you haven't listened to that one yet, we encourage you to do so. It's a fun one. I think after the results of that album artwork bracket, I think it was just laid out in front of us. It needed to happen this week.
Yeah, spoiler alert if you missed that episode, Nonagon Infinity was the winner that took all in our album artwork tournament last week. Definitely still, though, check that out if you haven't already. It was a ton of fun, and it was a nice little fun diversion from our usual album discussions like we're doing today. But right here, right now, it's back to business as usual, so here we are with Nonagon Infinity. And also, can't help but point out, obviously, it's the namesake of our podcast as well.
Yeah, Nonagon Infinity, of course, is the namesake of our podcast before we settle on the eventual name Podagon Infinity. I remember pitching to you, Joe, over either lunch or coffee one day, a couple of different ideas, and I had one name in my mind that stood out to me, but eventually you came up with the verdict, said, I really like Podagon Infinity, and I kind of chewed on it for a little bit, and I had some rudimentary artwork for it that was totally different from what you see on all the streaming platforms now. So I had to separate the name from that in my mind's eye, at least, but it was obviously a match made in heaven, and so we're excited to finally analyze the album that is, as we said, our namesake for this podcast.
Yeah, you had a couple fun ideas back in the early days of coming up with this show, and I don't remember what they all were off the top of my head, but this was the one that stood out to me, and I've actually gotten some nice compliments on it from people checking out the show that enjoy it. So I think we made the right move. And of course, this is a major album in the whole King Giz catalog. It's a very popular one of the early, really big hitting albums for them, and one that remains many people's favorite to this day. So a whole lot to say about it here. One thing that I noticed, which is an unfortunate missed opportunity, but this episode right here for us is episode 10. And man, what a major missed opportunity to have not done this last week and have it be episode 9. But funny enough, this was actually the band's 8th album in their discography, so they kind of missed the mark as well. So it's not just us, but whatever, no going back now.
Yeah, I was just going to make that point, too, that this is the band's 8th studio album, if you don't count Willoughby's Beach, which, as we've discussed before, that was self-released by the band. It was not on a label, so generally not counted. So, so it's, I think, all is even now, since the band technically missed that number 9 mark, but still, slotted in nicely where it did end up. Well, this part of the show is normally where we would read out some listener messages. If you want to send us a message, you can do so via Instagram, Facebook, or X, or you can email us, podagoninfinity@gmail.com. We are at Podagon Infinity also on those platforms I just named. We don't have any listener messages this week, but we do want to give a shout out to the Asheville charity raffle that's been circulating on social media lately. Our thoughts are with those who've been affected by the hurricane up the east coast of the United States. It's caused some very unfortunate destruction and really torn up some people's lives in some sad to see ways. So the Instagram profiles, Giz Family and Weirdo Swarm, who I'm sure are well known to a lot of the folks listening into this show, they are basically co-coordinating a Asheville charity raffle to help out some folks in need and giving away some good stuff. The band has actually taken part in this as well. P Doom Records has made some donations. This does end, by the way, at the end of the day, October the 10th. So that's next Thursday as we record this. It's going to be, I believe, the next day as you listen to this, if you listen to this episode the day it comes out. But yeah, if you're able to make any sort of contribution, in a situation like this, any little bit does make a difference. So we do want to extend that here on the show.
All right, so jumping into the album here, the name of it refers to the fact that it contains 9 songs that seamlessly flow from one to the next, and at the very end, loop right back to the beginning at the start of the first song. So 9 songs that could be played for Infinity. There you go, Nonagon Infinity.
Yeah, it just rolls right off the tongue, and not even tongue-in-cheek there. It really does roll off the tongue pretty nicely. And there is a quote I have here pulled up from the online outlet Flavor Wire. They did an interview with Stu right around the time this album came out in April of 2016, and asked how Stu came up with the idea for something that could loop infinitely, and Stu said, quote, "Thinking back, I guess, a year and a half or 2 years ago now, when we made I'm in Your Mind Fuzz, that had some kind of similar things in there. The first 4 or 5 tracks all kind of link up and sort of don't stop in that way, and have recurring themes, sort of like one big song. While we were making that record, we wanted to make a new record that didn't stop and was kind of like one big song. We lost track a little bit and wrote songs that didn't quite fit in and half abandoned the idea. This record was us just trying to do that again," close quote. So this was birthed a couple of years prior with the popular, of course, album I'm in Your Mind Fuzz, which I'm looking forward to talking about here on the show later on. But, you know, the idea for this looping and seamlessly transitioning record definitely had its roots in for a couple of years in the band's lore and studio efforts, and so this one was a relatively long time in the making, I think.
Okay, so I'm onto something when I say it feels like one big, long 42-minute song then.
Definitely, and I even remember the first time you encouraged me to listen to it. This had to have been maybe 4 or 5 Giz albums deep after you introduced me to the band, and I was listening to this one at work and just periodically taking peeks at my phone. I'm like, okay, that must be the end of that song. Nope, just kidding, guess it's not. And then the song would transition at a point where I wasn't expecting. So this album just like keeps you on your toes and provides all sorts of twists and turns that I can't wait to get into.
Yeah, I still to this day, even having listened to this album so many times, I still don't always know where one song ends and the next begins. Like I always, if I'm listening on my headphones at work or in the car, whatever, I always have to take a glance like, is this the next track yet? Or, oh, no, wait, it's just kind of teasing it. It's still the same song. Okay. You know, I still lose track of it. So that's why this one in particular, like a lot of their albums, but this one more than any of them is one of those that you have to just listen to start to finish. There is no skipping around with the songs here.
Yeah, before we get deep into the album discussion, Joe, I have to ask you, have you made the same mistake that I have a couple of times where in reference to this album, you either say or think in your mind Podagon Infinity when you're trying to talk about the album, not our podcast? Have you run into that at all?
In particular, starting off this episode and saying both of the names back to back was kind of tripping me up a little bit. I think I said the right thing in the right place, but we'll find out later when I come in here and edit this. But yeah, I never really said both of them back to back like I have until right now. So I'm trying my best to keep it together, but I'm sure we're going to slip up at some point today.
We better get some Ron Burgundy-style vocal exercises in before we get into the track-by-track. The arsonist had oddly shaped feet.
So even though all of these songs are very tightly connected musically, the lyrics and meanings behind each track don't necessarily connect in the same way. There's some shared themes and lyrics and things, but for the most part, they're really about different stuff and don't necessarily feel like they share a continued story, even though the music and the album as a whole package is one continuous thing sonically. It's full of very abstract lyrics. The songs don't necessarily come right out and spell things for the listener, as to what they're about. And so we're going to do our best as we get into the track by track to break them down and try to derive some different meanings from them. Another thing that's really fun about this album, and King Giz is famous for being kind of a progressive band, playing around with different time signatures and complex musical structure, but this album is just full of those odd time signatures that just keep you on your toes and make everything sound so unique and different, and some of the songs even contain multiple time signatures within them, so that's going to be fun to kind of poke around with and get into as we do our track by track in just a second. Another thing that is going to be fun to mention as we go through each song is the music videos, and I think we mentioned this on our Butterfly 3000 episode before. From what I've read, it seems like the band originally wanted to have a music video for every one of these songs on the album. They ended up not having the time or whatever. They couldn't make it happen, but there are still 4 music videos for four of the tracks on this album. So, God, that's the word "for" a lot. I'm tripping over my words here. But we're going to touch on those as we get to those songs as well, and that's going to be fun. The music videos are really fun, and they seem to take a literal take on the lyrics and not necessarily, go along with the deeper meanings behind them, but they're really fun and weird and creative. So I'm excited to talk about those as well when we get to them.
Yeah, we're excited to talk about the music videos too, as you said, Joe. Also, you mentioned that there are some strange time signatures on a couple of these songs, and that has actually drawn the album the old prog tag quite a few times. The thing is, though, people have given this album all sorts of names and put it in all sorts of spaces in terms of what subgenre of rock it actually is. There's a particular quote from Tim Sendra writing for the outlet AllMusic. He claimed that the band's, quote, inventive sound made Nonagon Infinity not only their best album yet, but maybe the best psych metal jazz prog album ever.
Nope.
He also called the album an amazing prog psych epic. So it's... Nobody can fully agree on what subgenre of rock this album is exactly, but regardless, this album was critically acclaimed, and it was King Gizz's first release ever to crack the top 20 of the Australian albums chart. So, despite the fact that nobody can seem to put it in a box, and maybe that's appropriately so, it got the acclaim it deserved in the end.
All right, folks, with all of that said, let's jump into the first track off this album. Track number 1, Robot Stop.
Nonagon Infinity opens the door. Nonagon Infinity opens the door. Wait for the answer to open the door. Nonagon Infinity opens the door.
So we open the door onto this epic album with Robot Stop. This has always been a live favorite, as well as one that still slams hard on the studio recorded version. A particular quote on what this song is about that I think nails it well comes from an NPR review that was written around the time of the album's release, and it says, quote, "The song introduces a darkly futurist mantra describing the mundanity of work and nonstop touring," close quote. And yeah, it's, human beings making up this band, but getting into this sort of robotic mindset, this muscle memory, this routine that's just so grueling. Tour, record, ad nauseum. And they have a passion for it, and clearly they would put out 5 albums the very next damn year after this one came out. But you can imagine being on the grind that this band, or almost any other rock band for that matter, is on, and you get to a point where you start feeling robotic, and you start to say to yourself, okay, I need a stopping point here. Where does it end?
Yeah, exactly. That's the same feeling I get from this song here, and I think verse 1 describes that perfectly. Loosen up, time to drop, fuck shit up, don't forget about it, my coffin's all I see, lately, robot stop. So it almost kind of has this energy of like Stu trying to hype himself up before a show or before going into the studio to work on music. Like, it's a grind and it's killing him, and it almost feels like he's a robot, he's a machine, just working and working and working his ass off all the time. And as we know, Stu is certainly a hardworking guy. But, it takes a toll eventually, even with something that you're passionate about, that you love doing, can really eat you up inside with how much it can tear you down. And, just putting yourself through all of that all the time can make something fun that you love really, really hard to get through sometimes.
Yeah, and I admire the band so much for, even though these thoughts seem to be right at the forefront of Stu's mind and likely the minds of the other guys as well, in spite of all this, they were still able to grind through it to get this album made to such a point that it became such a fan favorite, and as we mentioned, gave them the all-around acclaim from the critics too, and that they weren't burnt out after all this. They were so in their feelings about, it being exhausted and tired and acknowledging it, but like you said, Joe, Stu kind of hyping himself up, or the band by extension hyping themselves up. They are able to get through it one way or another, and this song is almost like a microcosm of the band, if you think about it.
I couldn't agree more. I think it really is like you described, and I know we jumped right into the lyrics and sort of the meaning or feeling behind the song right away, but I want to point out some musical qualities of this song. First off, the fact that as soon as you start it, it is right into the first, the first lyrics, and everything starts immediately super abruptly with Nonagon Infinity opens the door, which couldn't be more appropriate. You know, it's like you're being grabbed and just thrown through the door that is this album, and like you're here, you're in, there's no getting back out now. And I think it's also super abrupt just because of the way they've created this loop, which we're going to touch on more at the very end of the album, but you know, the end of it cycles right back to the beginning here, so it's meant to be abrupt, like, okay, you're back, the cycle started again. So that's why it is a super abrupt beginning that just kicks off right away. And I mentioned earlier some of the weird odd time signatures that happen throughout this album. Right off the bat, this song is one of those that uses multiple time signatures at different points of the song. Most of it, I believe, is in 7/8 time, or at least it is in the beginning. But then during the verse lyrics, it's like a standard 4/4 beat. So it's kind of back and forth between that throughout most of the song. And man, it's really cool. It's really unique. I love kind of weird timing music stuff like this.
Yeah, and an album like this with such complexities rhythmically, I think, is where, because King Giz, of course, did have the 2 drummers still at this point. Eric would still be in the band for another 4 or 5 years. The complexity that this style lends itself to, I think, was something that they were able to achieve relatively easily. I know there are certain twists and turns that have to be made, certain nuances when you're having 2 drummers have to work together. It's like, okay, you play this part, I'll play this part, you come in on this, etc. But with both Eric and Cavs on the drum kit for this album during this time in the band's history, I would have killed to have seen a live show in person during this time. Just the way those 2 guys are able to make these odd time signatures work and work effectively is just mind-blowing.
Oh my god, yeah, I'm right there with you, dude. I didn't see King Giz for the first time till 2022, so I've never gotten the chance to see them with the full band when Eric was still around. 2 drummers live on stage would have been so cool and so fun to hear that dynamic percussion happening all at the same time. So as we mentioned in the lyrics, Stu, or this character, feels like a robot, a machine working day in and day out constantly. And a lot of people online seem to connect this robot to, what we would hear about in the future on Murder of the Universe with the character of Han Taiyumi. And originally I was thinking, I don't know if they thought that far ahead about this character. They don't mention him by name or anything. It's not really a thing yet, but I think this really is kind of the origin of that, because watching the Robot Stop music video, which is so cool, by the way, I can't believe I didn't watch it until just before recording this episode. I'm not the biggest music video guy in the world, so I haven't seen all of the Giz music videos until I get to these albums as we cover them on the show. But in that video, there is one part at the about the minute 45 mark in the Robot Stop music video where we see this digital image, this animation. I don't even know how to explain the style. The video is really, really cool. You just have to watch it. Mm-hmm. But we see this image of what we now know as Han Taiyumi, this robotic figure, that exact shape and look and those eyes with the brain on top. It's all there, and that's the image we would come to know of him later down the road with future albums. So I guess it is all connected, and I guess this really is the origin of the idea of that character, and using him as this analogy of people and humanity and, all these sort of things.
Yeah, I think you're going to hear the words Gizverse confirmed mentioned on this episode a lot, Joe. And yeah, Han Taiyumi is in there. I noticed that very quickly when I was watching the music video. And the best way I can describe the style of this video, it's like the viewer is twisting and turning and tumbling through this digital world that's predominantly red and black. And a little bit of white thrown in, complete with robotic gators and bugs, as well as Han Taiyumi. You also get some of the fig wasps at the end, a little foreshadowing there to the next track, which we'll get to. This video is so nuts, and I love the way that, apt with the lyrics, that it draws you into that door at the very beginning, and then the countdown, and then the whole world just unfolds in front of you, this whole digital red and black world. It's nuts, and I love it so much.
I think the 2 top comments on the music video on YouTube sum it up perfectly. One of them says, "This is my favorite game for the Virtual Boy," which, if you know what that is, you know what the graphics of that game system look like. As an old school kind of Nintendo guy myself, I appreciated that comment. And then someone else said, "When you take 2 vitamin gummies instead of 1."
I was going to mention that quote too. I noted that one.
So yeah, that about sums it up. Yeah, check that out if you never saw the video for it before. And all the videos for this album are sick.
Definitely. A couple of musical moments that I want to highlight during this song. 2 minutes, 21 seconds in, Ambrose rips on the harmonica. He's alive and well, as always, on a Giz album. And that is immediately followed by the first ever appearance of a microtonal instrument on a King Giz song. You get that that guitar. I'm imagining being a listener or a fan at the time that this came out and hearing that for the first time, and I think mostly for Western ears, people who live in the Western hemisphere who aren't used to sounds like that in their music, thinking, whoa, what is that? And they would find out pretty quickly what exactly that sound was, because they would get a big dose of it the following year.
That's funny. That's news to me. I never knew that there was a microtonal guitar on this album, but now that you mention that, it definitely sounds like it.
Yeah, and then also a couple other moments. 3 minutes, 30 seconds, you get a call ahead to the melody of the next track, Big Fig Wasp. It's very brief, about 15 seconds or so, but then it settles right back into the robot stop groove. And at 4 minutes, pretty much right on the dot, did you notice this, Joey? You get a call back to the Hot Water melody.
Oh,
from
yes.
I'm in Your Mind Fuzz. But it's on guitar rather than on flute. So already at this point in the album, yeah, you're still on the opening track. You've already had a call forward and a call back. So this is already an indication of like, dude, this is creating some band lore here. So, dude, this album is just off to such a rollicking start, so jam-packed with stuff, and we're just one of 9 deep in this album.
You mentioned that we got a hint of the next track in this song, and there's also some imagery of robotic bugs or maybe wasp-like creatures in the Robot Stop music video. So that leads us right into track 2, Big Fig Wasp.
Okay, Joe, Mr. Resident Entomologist, here's your favorite song on the album. I'm just going to duck and hide during this one.
Yep.
Just kidding. This song is badass. I love it.
Yeah, my very first note I wrote down about this track is, Spencer, as the real bug aficionado here, how does this song make you feel?
Not good. Afraid, in fact. Dude, even researching this song, like if a fig wasp is actually a thing, which, spoiler alert, it is, even researching this gave me the heebie-jeebies. I have a wasp phobia. I don't even like looking at pictures of them, like on my phone or on a computer. Like, if it's unexpected and I'm scrolling one of my social media and somebody's like, oh, here's a bumblebee, I kind of go, gah! Like, I don't like it, you know? I'm all for as we talked about on the Fishing for Fishies episode, like the bees, the actual ones that pollinate and make honey and do all that stuff, they're cool. Wasps are assholes, and I will die on this hill. They pollinate very little. They are not even that good at pollinating. Yes, they're like food for other predators. That's the only good purpose I think they serve. Anyway, I'm on my soapbox here. I'm going to step down, and I'm just going to say that true to myself, when I was listening to this album before I came to this track, I remember asking you, are there any wasp buzzing sounds in this song that I should be aware of before I listen? You said, no, I don't think there are. So I went for it.
Well, funny enough, I don't know if maybe you still haven't noticed it at this point. It's not super realistic, and it's not super loud in the mix either, but listening back to this track a bunch of times recently, around the 2 minute 30 second mark, there is a little bit of a buzzing noise, and it doesn't really sound like a real wasp. It's probably like, buzzing from an amplifier or something, electrical noise, but I think it gives that effect of a buzzing wasp or hornet kind of flying around in the song. While I can't disagree with you that wasps are assholes, it's just a funny juxtaposition of having you, not even wanting to look at a bumblebee. Meanwhile, a couple weeks ago, I was out in the garden outside posing my Butterfly 3000 vinyl in the plants with bumblebees and moths and things swarming all around. And I thought it was nice. I thought they added something to the photos and, took a picture of this album out in nature and everything. But yeah, that's the two different personalities we have working together here.
Yeah, me personally, I would Photoshop the bumblebees in later on if I thought they added so much to the aesthetic. So good on you for getting so close and communing with nature.
Yeah, and because you don't even like looking at images of real bugs up close, they'd be like silly little cartoon like clip arts of bumblebees pasted on top.
That's more like it.
Yeah. So you gave a little teaser to the fig wasp being a very real thing. So I'm going to read a little description I wrote down here that I got from the Wikipedia page for fig wasps. Luckily, they're not too big, but they are real. So the fig wasp is a type of wasp that lays eggs inside of fruits such as figs. After maturing a bit, the young male wasps impregnate the females while they're still in their eggs, and then the females emerge pregnant. The male wasps dig their way out of the fruit, but they're wingless, so they can't survive for very long outside of it. Then the females are able to exit through the holes that the males dug, and then, they can lay their eggs inside of another fruit and start that life cycle all over again. Now, this is an absolutely fascinating little slice of nature that I never knew about before. But what in the shit was Stu on about when he came up with the idea for this song?
That's a really good question. I don't know, but I am curious to know the answer. But one outstanding lyric to me, when I first heard this song and was looking at some of the lyrics, does your God know insects grow in my poem? As always, Stu and the boys are giving us a little English lesson, always teaching us new words. I had to look up the word pome, P-O-M-E, and basically it's a generic name for a fleshy fruit. And there are multiple examples like apples or pears or, of course, figs, I believe, qualify as one. But I had this mental image of, a wasp growing, like coming to life inside of a fig. And I'm just like, oh, God, could you imagine something so horrible? And sure enough, I look it up. It's actually real. But it is one of those, like, it's one of those like things about bugs that sort of makes sense. Like they need somewhere to kind of lay their eggs and be birthed and whatnot. And I was a little bit comforted looking at the photo. Yes, I looked at a photo of what a fig wasp looks like.
Proud of you.
And they actually look really tiny. I would not have thought that they were actually a wasp. So interesting.
Yeah, they're actually not very big, which is good. But in this imaginative land that Stu's created with the lyrics here, there are gigantic ones that he's seemingly very afraid of. I always thought there that he was saying insects grow in my throat, which is definitely way worse imagery, but then later on in the song, he does say there's a hornet in my throat. So that does come back around. So maybe I was just kind of hearing the same word multiple times in there. But yeah, lovely imagery. I'm a big fan of Fig Newtons, and I think they will never be the same anymore after digging deep into this song. And yeah, they're ruined for me.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to be on the lookout in fact, I'm not even going to risk buying any more Fig Newtons. I'm sorry. They were a childhood
No more Fig
favorite.
Newtons. They're canceled.
They were a childhood favorite of mine, and after knowing that some wasps grow inside figs, I think I'm done. I'm good.
Yeah, and also apparently there, I guess, are accounts or that it's very possible that when you buy figs, there could be these dead hornets inside of them. Apparently there's some kind of enzyme in the fruit that, like, breaks them down and will, like, kind of consume their dead bug carcass. So yeah, I guess now every time you eat anything fig, this is what you're going to be thinking about. Sorry, everybody. I don't know. Are the chances real high that there's a dead bug in there? Maybe not, but maybe. I don't know. What do I know?
Who's to say? Yeah. Okay, but for all the bashing of wasps that we've done on the analysis of this track, I have to say, I love just the driving energy of this track. It's a really strong track number 2. And of course, we get the coming out of the opening track, Robot Stop. You get the refrain, Nonagon Infinity opens the door. And did you notice, Joe, and I would venture a guess that you have to an extent, that the repetition of that refrain going into the next track is basically a vehicle for establishing the correct note for the song that's to follow?
Yeah, you know what? I have noticed that in several instances, they go back to that refrain of Nonagon Infinity opens the door, but it changes key to lead us into the next song. And I think between here and the track that comes after Big Fig Wasp, that's exactly what they do.
So you've got that, you've got just this da 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 da, just this relentless guitar riff and the rhythm. You mentioned earlier also when we first started talking about this track, Joe, that there is something in the instrumentation where it almost seems to simulate like the buzzing of a wasp. I did pick up on that, and no, I didn't immediately rip out my earbuds and freak the hell out. But I listened to it and I'm like, okay, that's cool. They do offer kind of a little musical touch as to the theme and the subject of the song.
Well, listen, I'm proud of you that you didn't immediately rip your headphones out and you made it through some research and close analysis of this song without totally losing your mind. So good on you for that, Spencer.
Thank you. Right near the end of Big Fig Wasp, you get a callback to the robot stop riff, the dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun, and it shifts down in pitch and in key, and like we were talking about earlier, that serves as a vehicle to introduce the correct starting note for the following track, which in this case is Gamma Knife.
Gamma Knife.
All right, so Gamma Knife is one of the, if not the most hype motherfrickin' track on this whole doggone thing. I just want to say it right now. I love this song so much, and if I'm not already grooving and jamming and banging my head by this point, I am now when Gamma Knife comes on. The initial riff with the lone guitar, and then just that wall of noise that just slams in with all the instruments, and the chugging harmonica just gets me moving and grooving every time. I love this song so much.
Yeah, all the pieces come together in just this explosion of energy at the beginning of this track. After that sort of standalone almost guitar at the beginning, the down, 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 and then you get something that we haven't mentioned yet, by the way, Stu's just loud screeching howl, that oh, that's super distorted going into the microphone, that appears dozens of times on this album. It's almost like a war cry is the way I interpret it, and just the energy and the feeling that it's trying to convey, and it just catapults you into this hell of an outstanding rocker.
Yeah, that cry, it is like a battle cry, and we'll hear that exact sound throughout the album and throughout future music from the band as well. But this is kind of, I think, where that started, where we're not just getting the classic woos here, but we're getting like these howls and these all kinds of crazy noises that just convey the energy, and you just feed off of it when you hear this track. So sort of the background of where the name of this song comes from, and sort of this the general inspiration for it, I guess, at least in part. A gamma knife is a real thing. It's a form of radiation treatment for brain tumors. I don't know. Apparently it was invented, I believe, back in the 60s, I read, and so I don't know if it's still used today or maybe in some sort of modern form it still exists. It's basically a big piece of machinery that administers high-intensity gamma radiation in a small area in the brain to treat brain tumors.
So the medical description of what a gamma knife is, what gamma knife therapy is, there are some connections to it briefly in the lyrics of this song. I think the lines that stand out to me the most in this regard is "cut the skin and bend the truth." I'm wondering, Joe, if you're picking up on the same thing that I am. I don't know if this is true or confirmed or anything, as this is one of the songs that I had a little bit of a tougher time discerning the real meaning of. But is there an element of maybe mind control here? Like somebody's trying to rip into someone's brain and like, you know, plant a chip, whether real or metaphorical, and just kind of like put, you know, certain knowledge or ways of thinking into a person's or a being's brain? Are you getting that at all from the lyrics?
You know, initially that wasn't something I had in mind, but you know what? Now that you say that fits right in. I think I kind of had another idea, another road I was going with my interpretation of the song, was that it feels like it has some sort of themes of searching for youth or maybe immortality, and possibly through the means of surgery or some other form of transformation that you can't take back after you do it, you know, saying like, all I wanted was my youth, etc. It sounds like, you know, this person made some changes to themselves, to their body, to their brain, you know, trying to live forever or whatever, and now they can't take that back, and they're maybe regretting what they've done to themselves.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's another good way of looking at it, I think. And yeah, I do enjoy your analysis of that. A couple of comments musically I want to make on this song. You get some calls ahead to the People Vultures riff, dun, 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 dun. And of course, you get the Cavs drum solo starting at 3 minutes 20 seconds. And that was an interesting development in sort of the band's progression musically. Grabbed a quote from the outlet Flavor Wire, which we may have referred to earlier in the show, from 2016, the year this album came out. Stu said that Cavs was reluctant at first because he is not really a big ego guy. So when Stu came up with the idea in the studio, hey, I want you to play a solo for the song, Cavs was kind of like, I don't know. I don't know if I feel comfortable with that. But eventually Stu apparently came up with a solo that was a little bit less self-indulgent, a little less flashy, evidently, that Cavs was ultimately more comfortable with. But, dude, he rips it on the solo.
Yeah, funny enough, I never really thought of this section of the song as a drum solo because the guitar's still going, you know, there's still other things happening in the song, but for the most part, like the main, like the vocals, everything drops out except sort of that one guitar and the drums doing these crazy fills and crazy runs in between the repetition of the guitar riff. And going back to speaking time signatures and rhythm again, like I was earlier, this song, for the most part, is, I believe, in 6/8 or 3/4, depending on how you count it. But this section of the song is in the time signature of 11/8. So you can actually count to 11 each time it repeats, and it's kind of a crazy, weird, and wild time, but it's super, super cool and unique, and I love the way this whole section builds and builds before it gets back to the main riff of the song.
The music video on this song is probably one of the more amusing Giz videos that I've seen. Like you said, Joe, earlier, I'm not a huge music video guy necessarily, and I too kind of started to take them in for the first time this morning before we jumped on the recording here. This one is so cool, though. It features the band all in black robes with their faces painted in various solid colors. Stu's face is red. I think maybe Joey's face is red, too. Cavs is yellow. And they're all sort of standing in a circle in this little, almost like a terraced little pit in this rural-looking area with just grass and trees around. They're all playing their instruments. I like how Cavs and Eric are sort of seated on the terrace with maybe a little seat cushion underneath their butts while they have the drums on the tier below them as they're playing. And then these extras, I guess, in the video, wearing different colored robes, just start slowly creeping in from the wooded areas and the shrubbery around this little pit area. And anytime the gamma, anytime that's repeated in between lines of the verses, that you could see them lip syncing along to those parts. And we talked off mic about this briefly. Viewers beware, you will become dizzy from watching this video, cool as it is.
Yeah, I love this video, and it's so cool, but so much of it features the camera in the center of the circle where all the band members are, just rapidly spinning around as it films, you know, across all the band members, and it's so, like, just blurry and disorienting to look at. So if you get dizzy easily from stuff like that, maybe, you know, take that into consideration going into this video if you haven't checked it out before. But either way, still a really cool video. And you mentioned there's a bunch of extras in the video. It's not just the band. Yeah, there's all these, like, old guys with different colored robes that show up with knives in their hands. They all kind of just like come out of the woods and come out of nowhere, and they all slowly walk towards the band members and stand in the circle with them. And then they all raise the knives up, stab them into the ground, and it forms the Nonagon symbol in the center of everything. And one of the actors I actually recognize from some of the other videos. There might be a couple guys in there that they've used before, but there's one guy in particular whose face I know, and I think I know it mostly because recently when the Les Risques video came out, there's, you know, that one old guy in the hangar, like kind of watching them creepily from a corner, and you know, he makes some appearances throughout the video. That guy is one of the guys in this video here for Gamma Knife. So I guess, you know, it must be somebody that the guys have a kind of a long-standing relationship with that comes back in their videos from time to time.
I didn't notice that, so good job on picking that up, Joe. And I as you were saying that, I was picturing replaying the Risk video in my head, and I just wanted to say, okay, let's ride. Because that comes right around that point in the video during when Cavs' verse is ending. But
I just picture that guy's head like nodding towards the camera in the airplane hangar in there.
Yeah. So shortly after, all those extras sneak up on the band and then stick their knives into the ground, forming that Nonagon symbol on the ground. All of a sudden, you get a different camera angle. The camera starts to slowly zoom out or pan up or something, and then either way, you see this ginormous white egg appear in the center of it all. By the way, the band and the extras are all passed out on the ground, either passed out or dead, we don't know. But this huge egg appears in the middle of it all. The camera zooms out, and you get this quiet but foreboding guitar riff that's going to lead into the following song on the album, People Vultures.
People vultures got a ferocious final hearing. What else have I got left to do?
Yeah, man, People Vultures. This is my favorite, probably my favorite intro and outro that we hear. You know, the way that it comes in at the end of Gamma Knife and then just comes in full swinging with like that screaming organ and guitar and the rockin' drums. It's so menacing, and I think you used the word foreboding. That really is what it feels like going into this track. And man,
yeah, the riff is one of the more iconic and immediately recognizable ones on the album. Down, 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 down. And of course, it picks up in rhythm as the song unfolds further. But yeah, this is definitely a high point on the album to me, and we'll get to the music video shortly. That's a whole other beast that I can't wait to discuss. But yeah, this one is so cool, and it paints a picture of, in my mind at least, sort of greedy consumerism, like this relentlessly demanding consumerist attitude. And the lyrics, People vultures got approaches, final hearing, what else have I got left to spew down? People vultures waiting to begin, deadly ulcers feeding on my skin. People vultures waiting by my stage, wild dogs escaping from their cage. It seems to me, at least, that Stu is just trying to, in this, this world, this story portrayed in the song, that he's trying to perform, he's trying to give these quote-unquote people vultures what they want, because they're hungry for more.
Yeah, it kind of just has this general theme that gives you the feeling of people taking advantage of maybe the speaker in this song or just others in general.
Specifically to me, the lyric, what else have I got left to spew down, stands out to me. It almost seems like a cool way of saying, what more do you want from me? I don't know if I have much more to give you, but you keep coming after me. You keep trying to take advantage of me. Whatever these people, this group, this entity that Stu or the nebulous speaker is trying to talk about in this song. And that is the most repeated line in the song, by the way. What else have I got left to spew down? And I love the way that Stu punches the word down as the rhythm of the song keeps up. And that initial riff that we heard at the beginning of the track, down, 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 it continues and develops into that down, 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 and it adapts more of that frantic, fast-paced feel to it. And I think that really complements the energy well of the music video. This is the third of the 4 music videos that are featured with this album.
One thought that I just had, we talked about Robot Stop earlier sort of being about Stu feeling robotic and overworked with, shows and music and all of this stuff. Maybe there's a little bit of a connection here of, people vultures in this song being about like maybe people in the music industry trying to take advantage of him, asking him for more and more and all this sort of thing is, I don't know, maybe there's some sort of relation with that kind of theme as well. But yeah, I definitely have a lot to say about the music video transitioning over into that. Like I said at the top of this episode, before we got into the songs, the music videos tend to take a pretty literal approach on some of the lyrics, and I think this is the most perfect example of that. People vultures literally features, so, that egg at the end of the Gamma Knife video has hatched, and what do you know? It's a giant people vulture, a literal vulture made out of people, and those people being the band members all stuck in this giant, I don't even know, what almost looks like a crazy whacked out parade float of this giant vulture creature with all the band members stuck in it with their respective instruments. And yeah, it reminds me of like a wild parade float or like some kind of cheesy old like Godzilla monster from the 1950s or something.
I was trying to think of a way to describe it, and I think you nailed it there, Joe. Like a parade float, or if you live in the Philly area or you're familiar with local culture, almost like a mummers type of craft that might be featured in in one of the band's performances.
Something in a mummers parade, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I just love the humongous suit, and I like how the guys that in the band are just hanging from these various appendages or sections of the vulture, still playing their instruments. You know, you got Lukey with his bass, and you got Cookie and Stu and Joey with their guitars. And I love at the bottom how Cavs and Eric have just that single drum that they're beating on, because that's all that really fits into this whole arrangement since they're in the vulture.
Right.
And then you have these three different enemies who are just outfitted in these various colored and designed spandex suits. It almost looks like something out of a real low-budget, like, action show, like some Saturday morning show.
It's straight up Power Rangers.
Or
it's
Power
like straight
Rangers,
up
yeah.
Power Rangers
there you
vibes.
Go. Mm-hmm. Very much Power Rangers vibes. And they're trying to attack the vulture and defeat the vulture and the band by extension, but the vulture just keeps striking them all down. I also just love all the actions of the vulture and how they sync up with the parts of the song. I noticed a few times where Stu gives that, as we referred to it earlier, that battle cry, that "oh!" in his vocal performance. Oftentimes you'll see the vulture give a corresponding squawk with like those action lines, almost like the old the old cartoons or TV shows depicting action or sound coming from the creature. It's hilarious.
It's like his "oh" noises are like the vulture screeching. You mentioned earlier, you called it a battle cry, so right here it is exactly a battle cry as it's taking down these different figures trying to attack the big people vulture. And speaking of those three other entities that show up to fight it, shout out to the actors that are performing in those costumes. I got to imagine that they're like real legit stunt actors, because they're doing all kinds of crazy flips and like real looking martial arts moves in here. It's super cool, and that's, I think, what helps plant it in my mind of like major Power Rangers vibe here, because of the way they're moving and sort of just the general colors and look of these suits they're wearing are so in that vein.
I just want to mention one particular part of the video. I think it's pretty early on in the vid. You get this camera angle where it's like peeking around a corner or a hill or something, and you see this goofy ass vulture thing just strutting across the plain coming into view. It's almost like a very cinematic shot, like coming around a corner, really trying to build drama to what you're gonna find on the other side of that corner. And it's this vulture that's supposed to be menacing, but it's this goofy as hell, like as you mentioned earlier, Joe, this parade float looking thing, like hello.
Yeah, as cheesy as it does look, I'm still impressed with what they were able to do here, like the way that they've been able to stick all the band members in there while it's moving and stuff. I really need to see if there's like a behind the scenes of this video where I can see the construction of this monstrosity. Okay, so at the end of People Vultures, we get the return of that dark, menacing main riff that we heard in the beginning, but it goes on for a little bit longer here, and then leads us right into what I can only describe as the most chill and, should I say, upbeat song on the album. It's called Mr. Beat.
All right, man, let's groove for a little bit. Yeah, this one is indeed a little bit more upbeat, a little more cheery in feel than the preceding four tracks. Definitely more laid back in spirit. I'm going to go out and say this almost feels like trippy Beatles. Like something about the way the vocals are produced and sung, and then just that organ accompanying it. Just, it's such a deliciously retro, like late 1960s feel. And like, you talk about a mood shift on the album. This one to me is an outlier, but not in a bad way. I've always enjoyed this song. And I think it provides a rest stop of sorts after just this frenetic energy and gravity and importance in the first 4 tracks. You know, you've gone on a crazy journey practically to hell and back. The hell part will actually come later in this album in a certain degree. But, you've been through so much music that's rife with meaning, so many layers to things, and then you just got this simple groove, and it's just so catchy and easy to tap your foot to, and I love singing along to this one almost as much, if not more, than a lot of the others on the album.
This song really does, regardless of the actual meaning and lyrics behind it, which we'll start to get into, but this song really does musically offer a nice respite. It's kind of like the halfway point of, of course it's an odd number of songs, but it sort of acts as like a halfway point, little break where you get this more chill sounding song, the heavy, jammy, psych rock nature of the whole album up until this point, is a lot. It's a lot of energy, and so I love that this song kind of offers as a little break where you just kind of chill out and, you could stop banging your head for a second and just kind of dance and groove to it a little bit. I have to point out the time signature on this album. It's in 7/8, at least for most of it. It seems to be in 7/8 time, which is just perfect for the name of the song and the lyrics in this song, because 7/8 time is, of course, an odd time signature that sounds like one beat is missing from what you would typically expect from a normal rhythm in a song. Normally, you could count to 4 or count to 8, but it's literally like cutting short after 7 beats and looping the riff over again as the verse goes on, or the chorus, whatever you want to call it. So when he's saying, once I'm Mr. Beat, only miss a beat, the song's literally like missing a beat from what a typical normal standard time signature song would have, and it loops and starts back from the beginning. So I never thought about this super heavily until right now, and I think that's super cool what the thought they put into that.
Yeah, you just blew my mind saying everything that you did about the construction and the making of this song. I just picture anytime this song comes on, after the darkness and the evil elements of some of the first 4 tracks that precede this one, I just picture the band suddenly just putting these cool shades on and all these like psychedelic colors and patterns floating around them on like on a backdrop on the stage, in just like that stereotypical like late 1960s kind of flower power look and feel to it, just out of nowhere. And it gives the listener just like this is different and it's nice. It's a good place for it. Perfect placement, in my opinion. However, potentially a hot take here, I think the song hangs around a little bit too long. There is not a ton of substance to it. It gets borderline a little bit repetitive. I did say that I enjoy it. I'm not going back on me saying that. I will give the band credit, though. It lasts 4 minutes 56 seconds, to be specific. I will give them credit for sort of bringing down the vocals in the mix, almost like fading out the levels of the vocals as the song kind of goes through its final minute or so.
You said this song can feel a little long or a little repetitive. It's definitely repetitive. I mean, if you pull up the lyrics, you will see a wall of text with that line, once I'm Mr. Beat, I only miss a beat, over and over again, which is fine. I still love the track, but especially towards the end there, that section you're describing and sort of the quiet repetition of these lines over and over again, that certainly does feel like it goes on for a little while. Okay, so we touched a bunch on this song about how it sounds upbeat. It feels like it offers a nice chill kind of break from the overall crazy, chaotic, jammy nature of the rest of the album. But of course, this is King Giz here, so this can't possibly be a happy song. It has to be dark in some way and kind of sad, kind of melancholy in the lyrics, along with that upbeat, groovy tune that's going on. I'll be honest, I had the hardest time picking apart what this one's about from all of the songs. It is not really coming right out and saying it. It's not really immediately generating a thought or an image in my head, but there are some lines that do kind of make it sound sad. Specifically verse 2, where he says, happy days seem so absurd, lightning that's unlikely heard, Nova sunshine while I nap, making all my dreams so sad. I think there's several different ways you can interpret this. I don't know, somebody sort of reflecting back on their youth when things were simpler and happier and easier, maybe going along with that theme of feeling overworked and just feeling the stress of day-to-day adult work-life balance kind of issues, but I don't know. If anything, that's kind of what I'm getting, but either way, definitely kind of dark in juxtaposition with this groovy song, and you can make with those lyrics what you will in your own mind.
Hey, all they wanted was their youth.
All I want is my youth, damn it.
Hey, you're telling me. Yeah, so admittedly, a song with either not a ton of substance or some very murky, sort of unclear substance or meaning behind it, but an enjoyable track nonetheless, and placed at a really good spot on the album. And again, the sequencing is just expertly executed on this album. Let's go next to a song with plenty of substance. It sticks around for quite a while, but it's worth every moment of it. Let's talk about Evil Death Roll now.
Yeah, man, Evil Death Roll. Okay, so basically take what I said about Gamma Knife earlier being one of the most hype tracks and just copy paste that right here for this song, because they're pretty damn equal in my mind with the level of energy and just head-banginess that it delivers for me. This one just happens to be faster and even more chaotic than that track was.
Yeah, dude, this one's a banger, and Evil Death Roll, for those unfamiliar, I imagine most people who have come this far in this show and are into this band probably know. Evil Death Roll is when an alligator, or maybe even a crocodile, maybe they're anatomically capable of doing this too. It's where they grab its prey in its jaw and basically do a barrel roll, just trying to wrestle and maim and kill that thing, whatever it may be. And I've seen a couple of videos of a gator doing this, and the chances of it getting to a human and doing this, I would think, are relatively slim, first of all. But second of all, I think just the sheer cool aspect of it, in just like amazing things the animal kingdom is capable of. I just love the mental image of it, and especially when listening to this song, I could just picture a gator grabbing onto something and just going around and around.
Yeah, seriously, just hearing the song in my head and talking about it, I could just picture a gator or a crocodile rolling around, ripping some poor innocent little animal to shreds as it eats it. But it's gruesome and it's horrific imagery, but nature is brutal.
Yeah, and so are the lyrics on this song, appropriately enough. Right at the beginning, the first lyrics you hear are, "You started everything, you started killing things, you started severing limbs, evil death roll now. You float and wait for me, your scales are hard and green, open your jaw for me, evil death roll now."
Now. Yeah, this is, I think, out of all the songs on this album, this one is the most direct with the just, I don't know, the simplicity of the lyrics. It's just straight up like the line you mentioned, "Your scales are hard and green, open your jaw for me." I mean, I don't know, man. There's got to be some other sort of thought or message behind it, I guess, but this straight up sounds like it's about alligators or crocs eating stuff.
Yeah, pretty straightforward in my mind, too. Let's get to some of the musical moments on this song, because there are a lot of them. You get one of the quintessential jams on this album. We should mention this track is over 7 minutes long, 7 minutes, 14 seconds. So there's plenty of room for them to jam. One of the outstanding moments on that jam part to me is 3 minutes and 11 seconds in. You get that on the guitars. It starts off with one guitar and then a second guitar comes in, almost playing in harmony with that first one. It's a very Doors-like moment to me. That's what came to mind when I first started analyzing this part of the track. It sounds like the jammy part of L.A. Woman, like something ripped straight from that. It's almost just like a like going for a stroll, like in my badass convertible or something down the highway. It's like a very like deceptively bright and sunny part of what's kind of a dark and tough song.
Yeah.
But I like that part a lot. Also, at 4 minutes even, you got to call ahead to Invisible Face, both the riff and the lyrics. You distort the notion of the place, the universe's other face. So that lyric goes on for quite a while. I won't go through the whole thing. And then 30 seconds later, you get the Nonagon Infinity refrain again. And I just like how often they return to this. They return to the refrain, but they tailor it toward the appropriate key to the song or the section of the song in question. It just makes this album feel so much more like one cohesive extended track.
At the beginning of your introduction, getting us into discussing this track here, you mentioned that it is long, but it does not feel like it overstays its welcome. You don't get bored of it. In fact, it actually is the longest track on the album, coming in at 7 minutes and 14 seconds. But it doesn't feel that long when you listen to it because it's so fast. And you've already pointed out all these changes and different sections that it goes through. It really feels like something new is happening at every corner that you turn throughout this whole track. And the last other thing you just said, the invisible face lyrics that are kind of coming in before we've even heard that song, and then the repetition of the Nonagon Infinity opens the door refrain coming back once again. I think I've saw this written down online and described this way, but I think it's kind of cool to think of this repeated line as sort of the chorus of the whole album, the way that it comes in and out almost every song. It makes an appearance, and it's kind of the recurring refrain chorus of basically the entire album, and as it's already thought of as this one continuous thing, the way they flow into each other, and like I said, it kind of feels like one big 40-minute long song. So I think that's cool to just think of that in that way because of how much it keeps coming back and reminding you of those lines. Nonagon Infinity opens the door.
The chorus of this song, if you could even call it that, it's almost just more like a refrain in its own right. Evil death roll now. I like that Stu takes it one step lower when he repeats it. Evil death roll now. And it's fun to try and hit that note anytime this song comes up when I put it on Artist Shuffle, which is tough with this album, unfortunately. But sometimes I do Artist Shuffle. Sometimes, a lot of the times, actually, I listen to this album just straight through. I always like singing along when possible, trying to hit that low note on the now.
Yeah, and also I think it might be good to warn people that it is actually illegal to listen to this album on shuffle, so be warned.
That is true, yes. I will put I'll put Artist Shuffle or something on it, and regrettably, maybe I should change this, but this might be some sort of sacrilege against the band. I've cherry-picked certain Giz songs and put them into a Spotify playlist with tracks I think that are relatively suitable and easily palatable for non-Giz heads for, when Amanda and I will go out driving places. I think I have a couple of Nonagon tracks, and those and the Butterfly 3000 ones, the transition that waits at the end of each song, it just leaves me feeling empty inside because that next track that you expect doesn't come 99.9% of the time. And so I think, just like you said, it's a crime to shuffle this or anything like that or splice it up. Yeah, I think I might need to make some changes to that playlist.
Yeah. I would never shuffle the album itself, but yeah, sometimes like one of these songs comes up on a playlist you're listening to on Spotify or wherever, and it is really such a painful moment when the song ends and it's just hard cut off and something totally different plays. It's painful. But such is the case with many of their albums, but this one more than any of them.
Absolutely.
So looking at the end of this song here, the way that it ends on this sort of slower guitar repetition with the down, 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 down. It's like the same thing that was happening at the end of Mr. Beat, and somehow I didn't connect the dots till right now that Mr. Beat was teasing like that main riff melody of Evil Death Roll, and it's just now clicking in my brain. So I learn a lot just by talking about these songs on this show, and come to these realizations that I never would otherwise without analyzing them super close and listening to them on repeat like this, recording an episode. But that repetition of that at the end of Evil Death Roll builds and builds with the drums and everything, and sort of becomes this whole long instrumental section with different guitar solos and cool like keyboard riffs that come in, and each of the instruments just kind of get their own moment to shine and play around, and they just straight up jam for a good while at the end of this song.
Yeah, every instrument, every member of the band really gets a chance to shine at one point or another on the album. The album is a real sort of unifying effort and a sign of what a cohesive unit these guys are, the 7 of them at the time, at this point in the band's history, but also while giving the individuals a chance to shine, like you said, Joe. It's a real nice balance.
So aside from all the very straightforward and graphic imagery of a gator rolling around and ripping some poor animal to shreds and killing stuff, there's some interesting lines that I think maybe connect back to some of the motifs and ideas in some of the other songs, like the line, "You can see our history hanging on a knife," brings my mind back to Gamma Knife and how that relates to the opening of the door that is Nonagon Infinity and this album. And man, it's kind of tough to put into words. This song, I'm really trying to pull some deeper meaning from it. And Spenser, I don't know if you have any other thoughts other than that. But yeah, just another little moment that kind of connects back to a former time on the album. And as far as exactly what it means, I'm having a little bit of trouble. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm similarly at a loss. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say, more so than any other song on the album, this one is about the music more so than the lyrics. I'm not necessarily sure if that's what the band intended. It's Giz. There has to be a meaning somewhere. If we could dedicate another couple of hours of research before recording this, I'm sure we would have, taken time to unearth something more lyrically. But just the way all the band members get to shine on this track and all the different little sections that throw in all the variety to the 7+ minute epic, I just love it. I just groove along with it so easily.
All right, we mentioned a little bit ago that there are some lyrics in Evil Death Roll that are taken from the song that comes after it. So let's go ahead and jump in and take a look at the rest of that song. It's Invisible Face.
Invisible Face. This is a weird one in a couple of different ways. First off, the very staccato nature of the way this song comes in, the way it's sung. I distort the notion of the place, the universe. Like it's such a unique approach to it, just vocally and from the instrumentation standpoint as well. This one does a good job of changing things up in a direction that we haven't heard yet on the album. We were both trying to grasp for some meaning and stuff. I don't know if we necessarily have to dig into the lyrics just yet, but this one, like I said, it's just an interesting change of pace as we get into the final third of the album here.
Yeah, staccato is a great word to describe the sound of the rhythm, the instrumentation, and the lyrics. Everything's kind of coming in together on these same beats, and it's just got this really weird off-kilter rhythm that certainly grabs your attention right off the bat here. That's kind of the main rhythm for the verses and, for a lot of the song, but during the chorus with the lines, "What it is, impossible, gravity," that whole section has a little bit more of kind of a flow to it when it gets there out of the main verse. And one of my favorite things about this song, a really standout moment on this track that does actually start out pretty early on in the song. I mean, it's not a very long song. I think it's only about 3 minutes, but there's a section that comes in at about the 1 minute mark where everything kind of drifts off and you just get this quiet, like jazzy, groovy drum beat. And then slowly the instruments start coming back in, the bass comes in, then a little guitar, and it's just got this like jazzy, like bossa nova beat shuffle to it, like ding 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 ding. And it's just really fun. It's a weird moment on the whole album as a whole that I really appreciate and really like, and it just slowly builds and builds and builds, and then kicks back in with a final verse and, back into the main motif of the song with everything kind of heavy and weird again after that. But just a weird, cool, unique moment that I appreciate.
Great description there, Joe, as far as the bossa nova kind of feel of it. I think that's pretty accurate, too. This is about a 1 minute, almost a minute and a half long extended jam part of the song here. And for a song that you said is not all that long in the first place, it's an interesting decision, and I think a successful one at that, to put such a long jam in one of the shorter songs on the album. You get the soft guitar, a little bit of the keys, some gentle bongos, I believe it is, that Cavs and or Eric are playing during this section. You've had so much intensity on this record. We're on track number 7, by the way. Tracks 1 through 6 are pretty relentless. And we mentioned how Mr. Beat kind of offers a little bit of a chill respite. It's still relatively mid-tempo, though, at the very least. This part on Invisible Face is really the only slow part you get on the album, and I think that helps it stand out so much more. There's a lot of value to it, and the fact that it builds up to this place where, you know, you're getting toward the end of the album, and if you're a new listener to this album, you might be enjoying it for all I know, but you might be feeling a little bit tired. This respite comes at probably the perfect spot, and then just when you're settling into that quiet groove, bam! The vocals and the heavier instrumentation are back. Right at that 225 mark. So I think this is just so masterfully done on this song.
Yeah, it is kind of cool how this whole section takes up like about half of the runtime of the entire track. Digging into the lyrics and, you know, pulling some meaning from this really odd, weird song, the main sort of idea that I take away from it, I think it has some lines that sort of give the notion of feeling very connected to and like you very much are a part of the universe as a whole. You know, that it's not this separate thing from us as people, but we're all part of it in this, you know, infinite machine. As he says, the universe is a machine of creation and destruction, and just feeling connected and one with that. Almost like you're having some sort of psychedelic-induced epiphany about yourself and your existence and the universe. I think it's maybe kind of a deeper, kind of abstract thought, like along those lines. But that's sort of what I'm able to pull from it a little bit.
Yeah, and I think you used the word abstract, and I think that this concept being so abstract and tough to grasp, along with the fact that, you know, this force, this being, whatever it is, that's speaking from the first person for this song, Invisible Face, I think, is an apt description or characteristic, I guess, you know, for something that's so abstract. To me, that's how it connects.
Yeah, and I think when he's saying, like, in the first verse, you know, I distort the notion of the place, the universe's other face. He is, like you said, speaking from this first-person account, and I think describing himself as the universe's other face, like I am part of it, I am one with the universe, we are all part of it, sort of thing.
Something like that.
I don't know. But the harder thing is like just the name of it and the repetition of, you know, the universe has me, invisible face. I mean, I guess this is maybe kind of along the same notion as what I'm trying to get at here, which is that, you know, you're like this, you're basically invisible and like nothing in the grand scheme of the entire universe and all of reality and existence, but you know, you're still one with it and part of it, and we're all part of the same sort of flowing energy and matter within this whole thing altogether that's connected.
Yeah, and I think whatever meaning you decide to assign to this song, I think this is another fun sing-along part, the chorus section, if you will. The universe's other face, what it is, impossible, gravity, the universe has me, invisible face. I like the way on Spotify that it's just, and it's accurate with the way that it's sung, it's almost one word per line as it skips down with a couple of exceptions in line with Stu's vocal delivery of this. It has such a sing-along quality to it, but in a menacing, almost growl sort of way. That's probably my favorite part of this.
So Invisible Face is the final track on the album that has a music video for it. We pointed out the other three, and this is going to be number 4 of the music videos that they were able to create for this album. This one is unique because it starts out animated. This one is not fully live action. It is in part, but at least to start, it's all animated. You see all of those colorfully robed old guys from the Gamma Knife video that are all on like a ship of some sort or something with a little gator or crocodile in there with them. And when the song gets to that, you know, minute mark where everything gets all weird and chill and jazzy, that's when it switches to live action with the band members. And now they're all in those colorful robes, and they are, for some reason, they're like passing around this jar of mysterious red liquid and drinking it and then falling over or dying or something from it. And then when it kicks back into the full intensity of the song with everything back to where it was before, then it goes back to that animated style with those guys again. I don't know if this is intentional, but something I'm thinking about now, and specifically the fact that those other guys are older men in these colorful robes, and then we see the guys in the band also wearing the same colorful robes. I don't know if it's intended that maybe the band members here are like younger versions of those older guys that we see. Like maybe they're supposed to be the same people, but from a different time. As we mentioned, there's some, all I wanted was my youth. There's some mentions of like youth and time and, the cyclical nature of things and the universe and everything. Maybe that's, I don't know if anybody's thought of that before. I haven't read that anywhere, but that's something I'm just kind of thinking of now as maybe a possible intention for that.
Yeah, could be. And I'm looking back through the video right now, just sort of scrubbing through select parts. I like your analysis and your thoughts on how maybe these people are younger versions and older versions of themselves, that these people are supposed to be one and the same. And it could be because if you notice here, the film quality, or at least the filter that they applied maybe to the live action portion of this video where they're in the field, then they sit down in a circle and drink that potion or that juice, whatever it is. It has that very like old school Technicolor look to it. It's oh man, almost like a Monty Python type of look, but like the colors are very bright, kind of saturated. The shadows are very dark, but I think that might hint, Joe, at like you said, these being younger versions of themselves. So they're going with a very throwback look to this film or the video footage part of this, and then it's meant to be taking place in the future or a later time when they're in the spaceship and their animated forms. So yeah, you might be onto something. So Invisible Face winds down in a way similar to that of other tracks on the album, in that it provides a foreshadowing of what's to come on the next track. In this case, you get a guitar riff that goes bow, 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 and that of course is hinting at the penultimate track on the album, track 8, Wah Wah.
Man, these guys really missed a golden opportunity to play this one in Philly, didn't they?
They really did. Philly area gives heads, if you know, you know. For those who don't live in the Philadelphia area, we have this chain of gas stations / big convenience stores with made-to-order sandwiches and other food called Wawa. It's spelled W-A-W-A. I believe it's actually named after some of the local native people's word for a Canadian goose, as we know it here in the English language. But that is the logo, is kind of the silhouette of a Canadian goose in flight. But they definitely did miss an opportunity, the guys did, when they came through here in August to play a couple of songs off of Nonagon, including this one. And, I think... to be fair, maybe if they did, it would have had the reek of corporate sponsorship on it, even though that wouldn't have actually been the case. Yeah. But maybe they were trying to avoid any misconceptions of that, because they're not really the type of band that would go for some sort of large scale like corporate partnership or anything like that. But no, I think you and I, Joe, have the same habit when we're driving around the area, that we see all these new Wawa stores and stations popping up everywhere, and so you can almost listen to this song while driving through the area and point as the chorus is going wah 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 as another one is constructed and pops up.
I can almost, obviously this is something that the band would never do, like let a corporation use their song for like a commercial or something. I don't think they would ever be down with that, but I could just picture, I just have this image in my head of a Wawa commercial with this playing, and hoagies and shit flying across the screen while I'm hearing wow 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 wow. And they didn't play it live. They didn't play any Nonagon when we saw them here, but at least we got hot water.
Yeah, we got hot water. That's about all we could ask for on that regard.
Shout out to the 215.
This song brings a couple of interesting new textures that we haven't really heard on the album to this point. You get sort of a plucky kind of jangly acoustic guitar sound. Maybe a mandolin, or am I maybe missing the mark there? It sounds acoustic, though, and very, like I said, plucky and jangly quality. It's relatively low in the mix, but you can hear it. And then 1 minute in, you get an instrument called the zurna, and Stu talks about this in the interview we cited earlier in the show. It's sort of like a long wooden Turkish flute with a reed, and you can bend the notes when you're playing it. And so Stu also said in the interview, it kind of gives it like a snake charmer sound, and that's actually serves as an interesting precursor to what we would hear, of course, on the microtonal albums that would follow. Of course, the title track on Flying Microtonal Banana, which came out less than a full year after this album did. But another step into unique territories. We get more and more different feels on this album.
Okay, that's what that like screaming, almost bagpipe-like sounding instrument is that leads us back into the chorus. And that's, I guess that's what we hear so much of on the microtonal stuff as well. It makes a lot of sense that it is a Turkish instrument. There's a lot of microtonal music and sort of influence from that area of the world that they got to make the microtonal stuff. You pointed out the acoustic guitar that you hear as well. That's coming in during the verses and kind of jamming along with the rhythm of the vocals. And I think it's kind of neat. I don't think until this point we've heard any acoustic guitar on this whole album. Everything's been like dirty, shredding, fuzzy-ass guitars. So I think this is kind of unique in that way that it has this acoustic guitar and the zurna that you mentioned. Some really interesting, unique instrumentation happening here that we haven't gotten up until this point, which is really cool. And of course, there's lots of wah pedal. We got to have the shredding guitar wah pedal going along with the main repetition of that hook.
So the wah pedal and the lyrics saying wah wah, there's actually a multifaceted meaning there. The wah wah in this case is referring to the cries and the sobs of people who are being subjected to the evil power and presence of this demonic creature in this song. I can feel the earth is moving underneath my hoofed boots, earthing, fire protrudes from whence I'm pointing, fading every jewel, thronged upon the rock and metal. There's a horde inside this temple, mass around your favorite devil, learn to make them cry. So there is something evil afoot, and all these people are crying out in pain and agony and fear, as I understand it.
That's a really interesting way to look at the repetition of wah wah. I originally thought of it as almost like a chant, like a demonic chant with this devil character and this hellish landscape, but I think it makes a lot more sense picturing it as cries of the victims or these people being tortured by whether it be a demon or the devil or Satan himself. That's speaking from their perspective here. So yeah, all these lyrics really seem to be coming from the perspective of the devil, perhaps literally Satan himself, as described in some of the opening lyrics. Hoofed foot and fire protrudes from whence I'm pointing. Definitely makes you think that, okay, that's the devil here that's talking to me. And there's these descriptions of these different horrific, hellish monsters in verse 2 specifically. There's some things that are mentioned, such as a bat with 16 eyes, wolves with whips, and 40 goats with pitchfork sticks. God, say that 10 times fast. I'm already slurring my words just trying to say it once almost. And so, with this perspective, it's, this devil basically mocking somebody here, like saying, like in the very end of the song, verse 3, it says, I'm the chieftain of your feelings. I'm the god of air you're breathing. You cannot escape my dealings. I will make you cry. It's like this mocking, like, you're stuck with me in hell now. I'm in control of you and your life, and there's no getting out of it. So really, really dark lyrics coming up on this track here, but it's interesting that it's from the perspective of this dark entity themselves.
I just want to give a shout out to the Reddit user. I don't have their name, unfortunately, in front of me right now, but you might recall, Joe, that as the Philly show was approaching, someone who was attending the Philly show put out word ahead of time that they would be handing out Wawa sort of cross-themed stickers at the show. The aforementioned gas station convenience store hybrid old school logo, which involved kind of a sunset logo with the goose silhouette with Wawa spelled as the song Wawa, and with I think the tagline, a thirst to satisfy, a craving for your blood, which are the lyrics lifted straight from this song.
Yeah.
I liked the creativity there and the desire to almost will the band into singing that song. Of course, as we mentioned already, they didn't, but this song was meant to be heard by a certain subset of folks, suffice it to say.
Yeah, for sure. I remember seeing that person posting those stickers on Reddit leading up to the Philly show and really hoping that I would run into them there and get one of those stickers, but alas, I did not. But either way, really cool, unique design idea, and I love those little personal touches that everybody brings and the connections that people make between their city and their shows with the band's music and imagery like that. So, of course, I said earlier, Invisible Face was the last official music video that the band put out for this album, but I did see one come up that appears to be fan-made that somebody made for Wawa that's on YouTube. It's the channel Cosmic Drop on YouTube has it uploaded, and I watched it. It is this super weird and quite unsettling video. It's like this kind of old cartoon look to it, and it's very grainy and kind of dark, and it makes me feel like I'm like in a dream or on drugs of some kind, or a little bit of both. So shout out to them for making this really, I don't know if it's like old cartoon footage that they just chopped up, and it doesn't necessarily feel super like connected with the motifs of the album, but it is unsettling and weird. So yeah, shout out to them, I guess. Their name was Cosmic Drop, again on YouTube, if you want to check out their fan-made Wawa video.
Good stuff. Yeah, there's all kinds of great fan-made content, so we always enjoy shouting that out here on the show when the opportunity presents itself.
Okay, so continuing on with the themes of hell and the devil and torture and pain and all that good stuff, let's go ahead and cruise on into the final track on Nonagon Infinity. It is, of course, Road Train.
This ball of Satan's back. It's made of steel and black. It comes to bring you pain. It comes again. Road Train.
Appropriately, like a train, this one just keeps chugging and chugging with a nice backbeat to it. And I love the menacing feel that it maintains throughout, and still appropriately enough, because it maintains that sort of backstory of, the devil. There's this demonic presence about. Opening lyrics say, the spawn of Satan's back, it's made of steel and black. It comes to bring you pain, it comes again and again. Road Train, and cue the little ring of the bell of the train leaving the theoretical station there. I love that touch in this song. So this song, of course, seems to build like this evil presence as this chugging train that's just speeding through the land and just bringing everything that's evil and awful. The second verse here, the spawn of Satan's here, it's come to bring you fear. It sets the road aflame, it comes to kill and maim. The lyrics are just so graphic and terrifying, but it communicates the feel and the meaning behind the song so well. I would venture a guess, Joe, that this was probably not one of the more difficult songs on the album to discern the meaning of.
I really think it is a damn shame that this is one of the songs that didn't get a music video, because there's so much vivid, dark and hellish and just crazy imagery that comes along with these lyrics that I'm sure maybe there's something fan-made out there. I'll have to dig around. But man, it's a shame this didn't get one, because I could totally see this being like a crazy, trippy animated music video with just the darkness and the fire and like just the devil as like a train conductor flying through the fires of hell with, these poor souls on board being tortured for eternity. It's just crazy, crazy imagery.
Yeah, insane stuff. And the band, I believe, on multiple occasions has played this song as a lead into Robot Stop, as a means to sort of showcase that the infinite loop dynamic that they were going for with this album. And that was probably on my top 3 of things I wish I would have seen at the Philly show. But it seems that, you kind of get one or the other at one show, depending on when you go. It seems like the night that we went, it was the Mind Fuzz suite that we were blessed with. I will absolutely say that was such a great performance. But, I do appreciate how they give this song its due on tours when they break this one out as, like I said, a means of leading into Robot Stop and showing off that looping transition. I just have to vent here, though. Stupid, insert name of listening platform here. just throws, a wet blanket on that so hard because even if you do the gapless playback and you have the album looped around to where it goes right back to the beginning, there's still that annoying tiny little gap and pause to where that doesn't work out perfectly, and I absolutely hate that. It's a crime against the band.
Oh, yeah, man. I tried doing this a while back, looping the album, and because you can loop it, you can have it start back to the beginning, or you could just simply cue Robot Stop after Road Train, and you would think, okay, it's going to loop right back around seamlessly, just like all the other songs do, but no. I don't know if this is the way all streaming platforms are or what, but I tried to do that again recently just to see if that changed or if there was like some sort of setting I could change to get that to flow better without any sort of gap. No, there's literally just no way to do it, and I don't know if it's the streaming platform's fault or if there's something weird with like the streaming version of the songs that don't perfectly line up. I don't really know. And so I don't really know if there's a way to experience this transition seamlessly. I don't know if it, because you would think on any sort of physical medium, like obviously a record can't start itself over again and play the album again. And I really don't think there's any way a CD could do the same thing. So I don't know. I'd have to reach out if you know the best way to experience this album in loop with no gaps.
Yeah, please do. If you find out a little secret or a cheat, reach out. Podagon Infinity on all the socials, podagoninfinity@gmail.com. We are desperate for a solution to this.
Yeah.
As a standalone song, meanwhile, I love this ending to the album. Just that relentless chugging, as if like a train, of course, as the title hints. It's just this badass way to close the album. I don't think they could have done it any better in terms of the full-on sequencing from start to finish on this album.
For sure. And one thing I wanted to point out actually about the name of it and just the phrase road train in general, I think we mentioned a couple times that we picture the imagery of a train in our minds, fairly enough, but apparently road train is actually an Australian slang term for a semi-truck that is hauling multiple trailers on like a long cross-country, long desert drive. So in this case, I guess it kind of makes sense. You think road train, okay, it's a train, but on the road. So yeah, big, long chain of trailers attached to a semi-truck. But apparently that's actually what this is talking about. So I have to break that image of an actual train in my mind and think of a long-ass, like infinite truck from hell.
The great train of being, perhaps? But going back to the way this album loops around, the track, I'm going to call it the track proper because this track does change in order to properly serve as that vehicle to sort of loop you back to the beginning. The part that is Road Train sort of ends at a certain point, and then it sort of revs back up, bump, 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 and that's where you hear that low growling voice, which I didn't realize for the longest time was saying Nonagon Infinity, Nonagon, and so on. And yeah, I think I just realized that earlier this week that part was saying Nonagon Infinity and just building back up toward that eventual crescendo of when the album loops back around to Robot Stop, and then it builds up to that eventually full, rhythm and riff that would seamlessly lead into Robot Stop. I just love the band so much for putting out an epic work like this, regardless of whether or not the streaming platforms or physical media allow it to happen so cleanly. I just love the thought and the effort that they put into this album.
For real, it blows my mind every time in, digging into it here and doing a whole podcast episode on it. Really just drove my appreciation for it up even more. It's absolutely insane what they were able to achieve here, and I wonder if they'd ever try something like this again. I'm sure it was really hard to do, and so probably not. But, they continue to create albums that flow from one song to the next really well, and even just that is impressive to me. So really, really awesome stuff. A timeless one here, and there's absolutely no surprise as to why it's such a fan favorite and one that just continues to live in the upper echelon of the King Giz catalog forever.
So, all that said and done, it's time to discuss our top 3 songs on the album, as well as our least favorite. Joe, let's start with you.
All right, so as usual, this is really hard for me to do, and this album, I think it might be the hardest just because of the nature of how connected all these songs are, how they share different elements. They're kind of all just one smaller piece of this whole giant project here. But I'm going to go ahead and pick a top 3 anyway. I'm going to start off with Gamma Knife. I kind of alluded to that earlier, but it's one of the most hype songs and just gets my head banging every time. And I'm going to follow that with People Vultures. I just love People Vultures. I love the ominous sound of that. Just that doesn't get old for me. That just, I don't know, unleashes something in my brain every time. Mm-hmm. And finally, I'm going to go with the other super fast, crazy, chaotic track, Evil Death Roll, for my number 3. That one's pretty self-explanatory for a lot of the same reasons as Gamma Knife. It's just an absolute jam, and it's long, and it goes through all these changes. It's just so badass. What about you, Spencer?
Okay, well, one of your decisions surprised me there, and we I'm surprised we didn't end up with the same top 3. However, this one I shockingly found relatively easy to come up with my favorite 3. I had Robot Stop, Gamma Knife, and Evil Death Roll. Robot Stop, you just can't deny the way that it opens the album with a bang. Gamma Knife, like you said, just gets me so hype. And the drum solo, quote-unquote solo, because Cabs is not fully solo on that part, but the riff and everything on Gamma Knife and Evil Death Roll, that's just an indispensable part of this album with so much artistic and musical value in that extended jam section of Evil Death Roll. I'm curious what you chose for your least favorite, Joe. Let's hear it.
So I edited this out of the episode, but I was kind of thinking out loud with Spencer here as we're recording about what my top 3 were because it was so tough to decide, and I was very close to having Robot Stop in there. It was hard not to include it, but super close to lining up on all 3 there, but still 2 out of 3. As for least favorite, that's kind of hard as well. I think for my least favorite, I'm going to have to go with one of the shorter songs that just seems to have a little bit less interesting substance and things happening in it as some of the other ones. I'm going to go ahead with Invisible Face as my least favorite. What about you?
Okay, that took a left turn. That surprised me. Mine is not Invisible Face. When you said less substance, I expected you to go Mr. Beat, but I think the enjoyment factor in that one is too great for either of us to go with that one.
Yeah.
Mine, I hate to do this, but it's Wah Wah. I don't dislike it. It is not a bad song, but in terms of the musical thrill that I get from it, it's just not nearly as high as the majority of the other tracks on the album. So Wah Wah is my pick, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. That's fair. We were close again because I was between those two. I was between Invisible Face and Wah Wah for the least favorite, and I decided to go with Invisible Face for mine, but so close.
Hey, a little variety, a little disparity between the two never hurt. Alrighty, now it's time to get into most of what we like.
Most of what we like.
All right, most of what we like. Of course, if you don't know already, this is the segment where we give some shout-outs to some other music or media, just general things in the world that we're enjoying outside of the world of just King Giz. First thing for me that I definitely need to mention is actually some very Giz-adjacent music, both of which are coming from P-Doom Records and featuring 2 different members of King Giz. The first one is I want to give a shout out to Pipe Eye, which is, of course, Cookie Dog's other solo music project. He's got a new album coming out, and so far there have been 2 singles released from it. The first one being Lords of Lithium, and the second one being Travertine, that I think just dropped like yesterday or something as we're recording this. So definitely check those out. Super unique, very different than the Giz stuff. And, I'm sure many of you out there would be happy to support one of the guys from the band doing some other cool musical projects. And the second one is the band Heavy Moss, which is Lukey's other band that is putting out their debut album pretty soon. And they just put out the first single from it called Star. So again, that's Star by Heavy Moss. And that's Lukey from King Giz in that band putting out some new stuff. Just to shout out and make mention of one other thing that isn't involving one of the guys from King Giz, the artist Poppy, who you might know as kind of this weird internet character from years ago, and then she started making pop music for a while, and then over the last few years transitioned into making straight up like gnarly metal, like kind of just... I don't even know how to really describe it, but she has some really sick stuff, and I've seen her live before. She was awesome. Such a weird, cool variety of sounds and music and emotions. It was like such a roller coaster of a show. But anyway, she put out 2 singles recently from a new album that's coming out very soon as well. Those singles are called They're All Around Us and New Way Out. And again, that's from Poppy. So if you're into real heavy shit, she gets into some screaming and stuff that I haven't really heard from her before on these tracks. So super cool. If you're into the heavier stuff, check her out.
Sounds like I know what I'm putting on my gym playlist for the rest of this weekend.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Some good stuff there, Joe. I'm definitely looking forward to Lukey's debut album with his group there, and then as well as Pipe Eye, of course. I have listened to both of those singles. They are fantastic. As for me, I'm going to plug a YouTube channel, first of all. Our former coworker, Kyle. He is username KDog618 on YouTube. He streams himself playing various horror games. He's streaming pretty regularly, puts up videos regularly. He's hilarious. I've watched a couple of his games that he has played. I believe the name of one of the games he played recently was called Kiosk. There's this, I didn't watch very deeply into it just yet, but it's there's like this haunted food stand of sorts where you have to make all this food, fulfill orders, whatever weird shit happens. Anyway, shout out to Kyle, aka KDog618 on YouTube. I'd also been listening to the band The Birthday Massacre a lot lately. Past few weeks here in the northeastern U.S., the seasons have started to change. We're getting a lot more of the fall colors and the crisp fall air lately. And this is a band I like to go to during this time of year quite a bit. They're as far as visually how they look, they're very goth looking. The music is kind of a fusion of metal and sort of synth wave. It's really cool stuff and definitely seasonally appropriate for fall and maybe into the winter. So that's The Birthday Massacre. They've been around for 20 years or so, 20 plus years actually, and one of my favorite artists to listen to during these autumn times.
All right, cool stuff there, Spencer. I'll have to check that out. Well, that's going to do it for us for today's episode of Podagon Infinity on Nonagon Infinity. Thanks for hanging out, opening the door with us on this one today. We had fun diving into it, and we hope you did too.
One more time, just to plug our socials, at Podagon Infinity on Instagram, X, and Facebook. You can also email us, podagoninfinity@gmail.com. And yeah, that'll do it for us today. So until next time, I'm Spencer.
And I'm Joe.
Later, Gators.
Woo! What's up, Weirdo Swarm? You are listening to Podagon Infinity. Wait. Is it just me or am I experiencing deja vu? Has this already happened?
Yeah, you're not alone, Joe. What the hell's happening?
I thought we just finished the episode. Why are we
We're
back
in a loop. We're in a loop. We're stuck.
Oh, God.
Get us out. Help!
Help! This song's about gators eating shit.